Greetings, everyone. I'm Father Jose Alvarez, and I welcome you to the Finding It with Father podcast. It's a delight to have you with us. A very special welcome to you. If this is the first time that you're joining us, make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you can be alerted when our episodes are released. That's every week. And also hit the like button if you happen to like it. That would help. And very importantly, share this with people you know, friends, those who you think might enjoy it, and certainly people that could benefit from it. This is all about helping all of you, all of us, find it, find life, find the presence of God, presence of Jesus, who is already there in our lives and everything and anything. You see, the purpose of the podcast is to really try to make us aware that life isn't as ordinary as we often think it is, because this extraordinary God, right, embeds himself very creatively in everything and anything that is happening to us. He's always there. He never abandons us and is always reaching out to us to help us live more fully. And if we discover that presence, and if we engage with him, and if we take on his invitations, I can tell you that what's going to start to happen in our lives is, we're going to have a little more zest in our lives. We're going to get a little extra bounce in our step, a little, more of a twinkle in our eye, and he's going to take us to places that we never imagined. And that's where we are today in this episode. We're going to take you to the place that we all want to go to. And that's heaven, right? And I told you that today I would have someone here on the podcast who's actually been up there and obviously came back to talk about it. And that person is going to give us an account of his or her experience, what they encountered up there. And it's fascinating. It's a fascinating thing to really listen to. And it's very much my pleasure to now introduce that person to you. Ta-da! Here he is. Yes, it is myself. It's not a joke. This did indeed happen to me. It's interesting because every now and then we'll hear an account of somebody, and usually it happens in this fashion. Somebody either has a very severe accident or a bad medical episode, sometimes in surgery, sometimes outside of surgery, in which they feel like they have died. They leave their body. And, there's all kinds of different accounts of what they experience, but some of them actually say that they find themselves in heaven and, they come back. All of them reluctantly. That's what a lot of these people have in common. And I can tell you that I have that in common as well. But let me tell you how this happened. I was very fortunate because in my case, what got me up there wasn't an accident. It wasn't a bad medical episode. Not at all. It was, the Lord was so good to me. I've been pampered. It was a very pleasant way of taking a visit up there. This happened back, I can give you the exact date. It happened back in August 14th, 2016. And I was visiting Chicago, the city of Chicago. I have a few friends there who are big sports fans. And, on this particular day, the plan was in the evening to go to Wrigley Field. For those of you who have been living under a rock and don't know what Wrigley Field is, that is where the Chicago Cubs play baseball. It's the greatest, in my estimation, of all major league ballparks. I had been to Wrigley Field many times for day games. I had never been to a night game, but the plan was to go with this friend of mine to a night game. And that morning, I was staying with other friends near Lake Michigan. They're on the south side. And I took a run in the morning. I took a run on the shores of Lake Michigan and went back to the house, had a little something to eat for lunch. And then early afternoon, took a nap. It wasn't a very long nap. It might have been 20, 25 minutes. And it was during that nap that I had a very, very interesting proposition. I started having this dream in which I was standing somewhere, and it wasn't defined where I was. And all of a sudden, I had Jesus approach me, and he came from this side, came from over there, and he stood right here. I know exactly how far away he was from me. Now, I will tell you this, and a lot of this is difficult to explain and could be difficult to conceive, but the whole time in the dream, I never saw him. But trust me, I knew he was there. I knew it was Jesus, and when you are in the presence of Jesus in such fashion, you know without a shadow of a doubt that he is God. And as he came to me and stood there, he asked me a question. And he said to me, he said, "Do you want to see the new Jerusalem?" Now, I knew that was code. It's code for heaven. You know, in the book of Revelation, heaven is referred to, especially at the end of that particular book, as the new Jerusalem. And, you know, I'm no dummy. I said, sure. Now, as soon as I said that, it's as if he and I were standing on a platform. There wasn't a platform, but that's the way it felt. We were standing on this platform that started moving up very slowly. And in front of us was this very, very tall, high, rocky cliff. And as we went up, I could see that on the side of the cliff, there were like dwellings. There were these, what seemed to be like caves, but they weren't like dark, dingy spaces, totally the opposite. They were open spaces. And I could see people living there. They were families, what I saw. I could tell they were families. And they kind of looked like, you know, living room of sorts. And the people there were very happy. And they were, what kind of caught my eye was that they were helping one another. They were serving one another. You could tell they enjoyed each other's company. I remember thinking, wow, this is really beautiful. I remember thinking, these people are happy. And the higher we went, not only did I see these happy people, but I started feeling happier and happier. It was something that began to take over me. And I saw others on the way up, and as we went up, they were increasingly happy. And then as we approached the top of that very high cliff, the Lord asked me a second question. He said to me, he said, "Are you ready to see the new Jerusalem?" And I said, yes. And as soon as I said yes, it was almost as if I were a drone. And all of a sudden, I found myself hovering over the top of this, you know, cliff, over the top of this very high mesa. And the landscape below me, and I was high enough. I wasn't so high that I was disconnected from it, and I wasn't right on top of it either. It was like the perfect distance. But the landscape that I was hovering over was absolutely beautiful. Everything was very natural. It was like beautiful nature, let's say. You know, there were rolling hills, and there were all kinds of trees here and there. I remember seeing some pine trees over here on this side, and again, other kinds of vegetation, and there were houses. There were houses that were spaced apart from each other. Everything was very clean. Everything was very well taken care of. Manicured gardens, all kinds of flowers. The houses were very, very nice, elegant houses, but they weren't ostentatious and they were simple enough. And I remember thinking, wow, this is wonderful. I remember thinking, there's a lot of privacy up here. Yet, you could tell that the houses were, separate enough from one another or close enough to one another that there was a great sense of connection with other people. There wasn't the sense of anyone being isolated up there. And I never saw anyone. The only thing that I saw that was a bit out of the ordinary, let's say, was that between where I was hovering and the landscape below, I saw little stars that were twinkling. And listen, it was daylight. In fact, everything had like these colors that were absolutely beautiful, like these golden, yellowish orange, sort of pinkish tones, the kind that you see, when the sun sets at dusk, but far prettier than that. Yet I saw these twinkling stars in daylight, and I remember thinking at the time, gee, that's kind of weird, because you're used to seeing stars, above you in the dark, and I'm seeing stars in the middle of the day, twinkling below me. And I got to tell you, there was a silence there that was worth $1 trillion. Oh, it was so soothing. Everything was so unbelievably peaceful, fulfilling. I mean, I couldn't get enough of it. And more than anything, and this is hard to describe, but if there is one word that could describe what I mostly felt coming out of that entire environment, was this. It was sweetness. I didn't smell anything. I didn't smell anything sweet. I didn't. It's what I sensed. It was what was flowing inside me and through me, and I couldn't get enough of it. And this is what I most remember about it all. The whole time this was happening, Jesus was right there next to me. I still didn't see him. But everything that I saw, that sweetness and all that beauty, everything that was there, everything was coming out of him. If you would have removed him from there, all of that would have gone to nothing. To nothing. It was all about him. And it was unforgettable. And you know how dreams are. You have a great dream, you want to stay in it, and eventually they begin to fade. And I could begin to feel this fading, and I was desperately, trying to hang in there, to stay there. And I tried to stay there as long as I could. Eventually, I realized it was over. And I woke up in that bed, and I opened my eyes, and I thought, oh, what a downgrade. I'm back in Chicago. It was depressing, and by the way, and I love Chicago. And it was such a letdown. It was such a letdown that when I woke up, I have to tell you honestly, I didn't even feel like going to that ball game in the evening. I didn't. Not to worry, by the way, I quickly recovered from that. My friend who was going to the game with me used to work in the food industry. He would supply food to the best restaurants in the city, and he knew where to go. And we found this great little Italian place near Wrigley Field, and we ate like we were in heaven. I could barely fit in my seat there for the night game. We had a great time watching the game, but regardless, that was my experience. That was my trip to heaven. quite often I think, well, why did this happen to me? I don't know. That's mystery to me. I can tell you that I think about it almost every day. It's been a great point of reference. And obviously, I think that perhaps part of the reason for it was that obviously this would be a great help to many people in ministry. I share the story quite often with people who are on the way out, who are about to die or conscious enough to be able to take it in. It's helped a lot of people, I hope, and certainly helped that it's helping you. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to draw from this experience that eventually I came to recognize. And one of them is this. As I reflected on all this. Everything that I saw up there, everything that I saw is everything that I am most deeply longing for in life. Beauty, order, privacy, yet being connected to other people, silence. When you do what I do, if you're a public person, and every priest is a public person, you've got everybody and their mother after you and needing something from you, and it's wonderful to do that. We all enjoy doing that, but you do need to recharge. You do need to quiet down. You do need to retreat, because you can't give what you don't have. So you need to find new life constantly. And again, everything that I saw was what I'm most deeply looking for. And I think that's going to be true for all of us. See, heaven is not a one-size-fits-all reality. Of course, God is very creative. So it is my common sense tells me that it is going to be very creatively experienced by everyone. And I think the Lord gives us a little sneak preview of it at the Last Supper when he speaks to his disciples. He's getting ready to leave them. And he says to them, this is a reading, by the way, that is often read at funerals. He says, this is from the Gospel of John. He says, do not let your hearts be troubled. You have faith in God. Have faith also in me. Now listen to this. In my Father's house, there are many dwelling places. What does this mean? I don't know that it means that there are different types of little houses, some with 2 stories, others with 3 stories or whatever. It means a lot more than that. It means that there are a lot of different experiences that we will all have, which are home to us. They're home to us. That's one of the important things that I draw from that dream. Everything that you most want to see, whoever you most want to see, family members, friends, whoever that is, your favorite pet, your favorite pets, or maybe even your least favorite ones that you grew to love. Hey, it's all going to happen. It's all going to happen. The Lord can make all of that happen. The Lord completes everything in heaven, and it's unending. It's unending creativity, unending surprises, unending joy. The other thing that I can tell you that it's really what impacted me the most from that experience was that, the fact that everything, as I said before, was coming out of Jesus. If it wasn't for him, none of that would be there. And, every Sunday as Catholics, those of us who are Catholic, when we go to Mass and we profess our faith, and we say that part in our profession of faith that states, through him all things were made. Ever since I had that experience, I adore saying that line, because I not only know it, I've experienced it. Every time I say that on Sunday, I say, yeah, no kidding. Of course. Through him, all things were made. Through him, all things stay alive. Through him, all things come to be and continue to come to be. Now, one of the things that intrigued me, a couple of things. One, this little business of the stars. I could never make heads or tails of what that was about. I asked a priest friend of mine who was a spiritual director to me at the time. I said, "Hey, what were those stars? I don't get it." And he said to me, he said, "Dummy, don't you realize?" He says, "Those are the people that live up there. There are passages in scripture that say." The souls of the just will be like stars in the heavenly sky. And the other thing that intrigued me, and I asked this of another priest friend, I said, how come I didn't see Jesus? I was dying to see him. And he kind of laughed and very wisely reminded me. He said, haven't you ever heard that verse from Scripture that's all over Scripture in the Old Testament, New Testament? Says, no one can see the face of God and live. And let me tell you why. Because it would be so unbelievably awesome that life would be unbearable thereafter. We would be completely and totally depressed. We couldn't handle this. And so the Lord doesn't fully reveal himself to us because there's no going back from that. This is the kind of God that we have. This is who Jesus is. And he wants to extend that to all of us. There's nothing he wants more. My favorite scripture passage is John 10:10. I've come so you may have life and have it in abundance. Makes all the sense in the world to me. And I think in the meantime, until we get there, and we'll all get there, you can be guaranteed of that, the Lord comes to us constantly. And to the degree that we engage with him, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast, to the degree that we're willing to take on his invitations, as he extended one to me in that dream, will be to the degree that we're going to begin to experience things even in this life that we couldn't even conceive of. Things that will fill us with a life and a perspective and, like I said, a zest, an enthusiasm, a joy that we won't be able to contain it ourselves. We'll have to celebrate it. We'll have to share it with others, that's what's happening right here, right now. Now, before I tell you what our next episode is going to share with you, and we're going to, listen, it's tough to recover from going to heaven. Where do you go after you've gone to heaven? Where do I take you after I've taken you to heaven? Well, I'm going to take you to a little piece of heaven in your own homes. I'm going to take you to the kitchen, but I'm going to tell you about that after I thank our sponsors for supporting us. We have wonderful sponsors. Every week you're beginning to see a few more names right there at the beginning of the podcast. We thank all of you who are giving us this help, this help which goes to really, again, strengthen the reserves so that we can continue here at Epiphany Church and School to make greater renovations, new creations, to build up the place, make it beautiful, make it relevant, make it full of life. It doesn't just happen. It requires resources. It requires a lot of work, a lot of help, a lot of dedication on the part of many. And those of you who are sponsoring this podcast certainly are contributing to that. So we hope that you can be a sponsor. There are many ways to sponsor this podcast. You can see the sponsorship options there on your screen. You can be a supporting sponsor, or you can be an elite sponsor. All you need to do is contact Denise Roca, who's one of the most pleasant human beings you will ever deal with. If anybody complains to me about Denise Roca, I'll say, you've got mental problems, obviously. But then again, I don't live with her, so, it works out great this way. But Denise really is a sweetheart and very capable at what she's doing for us. And so we thank her for what she's doing. Just contact Denise, sponsor us, and we'll keep building what we're building up. Next podcast, next episode, we're going to find it in the kitchen. I'm a bit of a foodie. I love cooking, so I'm going to show you how to make my most requested dish. And it's a dish that I picked up at a little restaurant in New York years ago that I would very frequently visit. So we're going to find it. Listen, that's good stuff. You want to tune in to that. We're going to find heaven, or at least a little piece of it, in the kitchen. So thank you for joining us. Continue to journey with us. Keep trying to find it as you go along. Keep trying to find life, find God, find Jesus, who is right there, everywhere with you all the time, inviting you to take something on in your mind, in your heart, in your life. And we'll catch you next time.